So we get rear deck glued on, and I've got my alignment skewers here, and try and pull them out. If you can't get them out, cut them off flush, but there's no reason for them to remain in the hull once the glue has set up. So you might as well just pull them out so they don't get in the way. So looking at how to make the bow compartment the same way we made a stern compartment, we have our bulkhead location marked here, and looking at the foam I have available, I'm going to show a variation on how to make a bulkhead versus the kind of complex fitting and cutting and slowly dropping it down into the hull over each step. And that is one that is made out of sections the way I used to make it, and it's easier to make. Might use a little bit more glue, takes a little bit more cutting. That's the trade-off, so we'll demonstrate that now. So of course the first thing you have to do is you have to know how wide does each section have to be. So measuring right across here, measure at the top just to make sure I can read it on the 13.5 inches on the trailing edge, which means actually you need to cut your piece at 13.5 inches and then file the sides to taper. So I'm taking just a piece of the waist. It's one of the smaller pieces because I only need a shorter piece here. Measure 13.5 inches across. It's going to cause it to be cut right there. And that is actually good because that is giving me 2 inches deep or width to the stack here, which is what I like to work with. So then we just need to cut this end as well to 2 inches, just so we're not wasting space. So there's 2 inches there. Lay my straight edge across it. Scribe the line to be cut into the foam. And now it's just simply a matter of trimming the angles to meet the actual sides of the boat relatively square to the way we want them to. Which once again, same idea that we used on the other end works here. Flip it over. I've got my 2 marks. On this end, it's almost there, so I'm just going to file this. I can take that and good enough for a foam boat. Here's my first layer. And then we're just simply going to continue to do that for each layer, measuring the width, fitting it in, gluing another one on top until we come up to the level of these rails. Those of you that are paying attention and maybe going, hey, wait a minute. Yes, I am going 1 layer deeper because this is a tandem, and one of the things I find with tandems is you kind of really want a little bit more height to deal with the extra weight of 2 paddlers, especially if you're going to bring gear and go camping or anything like that. So this is going to be 1 more layer deep, and we are going to make another set of rails to run down either side of just the cockpit, not the bow and stern. That's why this bow and stern are actually getting a deck over their cargo compartment. So what you see me doing here is I'm taking one of those long, skinny leftover pieces from this side of the hull when I cut it out, and I'm just making a 2-inch strip all the way down, and then I'm going to cut it out, and then I can cut it to whatever length I actually need to make layers of this bulkhead. And this is another method. If you saw my other method and you just thought, hey, that looks way more complex than I want to deal with, or I don't think I can do it, you can't mess up this way. This is no different than when you made the rails and stacked them and glued them together. So now that I've cut these two pieces apart, so I have a long 2-inch one here. I cut it right where it gets underneath 2 inches in dimension this way. And the reason for the 2 inches is it's 2-inch thick foam, so that's almost a square. 2 inches is perfectly fine for a bulkhead. In fact, this bulkhead will probably see more stress than the back one, only because some paddlers will be able to rest their feet against this. And so when they're paddling, you're actually pushing your feet against that bulkhead. The rear bulkhead isn't going to see that kind of load. The most it's going to see is the middle of their back maybe pushing against it, and the deck will take that load versus the way feet can kind of really, you know, we think about where your toes, right behind your toes, the ball of your foot there, you can put some real pressure with that if you're really pushing. So that's what we're counteracting here. And actually more layers is more glue, makes it stronger. Believe it or not, the glue is actually stronger than the foam in this boat. So once again, measure your width, and right at the top edge. I'm going to call this 15.5. So 15.5. Cut. Of course, I got to file the edges, so I'm going to have to mark them like the last time. I'm going to use that smooth edge. There we go. So I've got it all pieced in, and it's actually fitting pretty nicely. However, you'll notice it's not the same height. How did that happen? Variety of factors. Believe it or not, these foam panels don't always a uniform 2 inches thick. It's close. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. Even in the same panel, especially with the green foam. The pink I haven't noticed it as much, but this green stuff that Lowe's sells, you'll actually see waves almost in the panel. And I think it has to do with the dye. The way they make this, from what I read online, is it's heated up and then it's extruded through a die. And then it kind of expands as it goes through because they mix things in it to make it foam up, and the color and the fire retardant and all that kind of stuff. And something about their dye causes ripples, and even the printing makes an indentation in the foam. You can actually see if you look at it with the light over the panel the right way. So that's what happened here. It's not the end of the world. After once it's cured, I'm just going to probably take the power plane and just right across, level it off. And then the other thing I want to figure right now, and I can't do it all at the same time because of this, is the bow deck, how I'm going to take care of that. And the bow deck, of course, it's going to be that remaining piece that we cut off the deck lid for the stern. That's what we're going to have here on the bow. The issue is, as we come around and we look at this, we're not covering the bow. We're going to piece this together. We still have the long, skinny piece that was left over from the ribs. Like, normally I cut the ribs a little thicker. We won't have as much left over, but there will be enough, maybe piecing together triangles, doing whatever we have to do to cover the bow. And once it's all glued, set together, clamped in place, cured, and then smoothed off with the power plane, you would not know that I pieced pieces together to make this bow. And that's actually the beauty of foam. When you glue it together, you've made one solid chunk. Because, I mean, just the other day I was at a doctor's thing, and the came out that I was building a kayak, and they wanted to know, well, out of foam, where do you get a big enough piece of foam to build a kayak out of? And so then I explained, well, you take it, you cut it in pieces, you glue it in layers, you glue the pieces together, and it turns into a kayak. And that's exactly what we're doing here. It's piecing stuff together, and I'm showing you the way I'm doing this one. I could do another one next week, and I won't piece stuff together the same way, because you just kind of gotta figure stuff as you go. And this is one of those great things that there's no wrong way. It isn't like with plywood, where now you gotta go buy a whole nother sheet of plywood because you cut something the wrong way. Foam is much more forgiving, and this is exactly why. Because I'll square this edge off, and I'll glue some more pieces on, and we'll cover the bow. I might even be able to do it with just the waist that I'm going to cut off right here and right here. I'll find that out once I cut everything out. And yep, it worked out just like I thought it might. I traced out, scribed the bow deck, same way I did the stern, and then those two off-cut pieces will be a perfect fit for gluing together into one solid piece that will become a one-piece bow deck once it's all been sectioned and squared off, and probably use the butterfly scarf joint to stick it all together. But we'll have a one-piece bow deck out of one piece, only glued back together from three pieces into one. So for sectioning this together, obviously that line's real close. You could almost think that I broke them off different ways than I did. But obviously we want to have a straight line for it to be joining along. So this is an easy way to get that, which is just simply to trace, with these laid out along the lines that I want them to follow to their sides. And now if I cut along these lines that I just scribed, I'll have a pretty close straight edge that will actually make a pretty tight seam with the butterfly scarf joint and some fine tuning with the Sureform, so that I can make this so that hopefully that seam will disappear once it's wrapped, and nobody will be able to see that I actually sectioned this foam together. So with all the edges cut, smooth across, you can see it's going to be relatively close fit, and then using the butterfly scarf joint with the tape to pull it tight should get rid of almost all of that gap and actually make a pretty uniform piece when it's all done. Okay, so what we have going on here is a three-way butterfly joint. So you have to think, how is this going to go together in the end? What do I want to fold first and fold second? And in this case, we obviously are going to want these two. I think this tape is cheap. We're going to want these two to be the first part so that we can hinge them onto that part. So, piece of tape below. Set them as tight together as we can. Lay the tape. And you want this there. This tape is, how tight it is that's your hinge. That's what holds everything together while the glue is setting up. Like I can do right there. Alright, so I've got the first part done, so now I'm going to go ahead and lay my glue in. So take glue. Nice cold glue. It's going to run slowly. But as I've said before, I like it when the glue is a little thick and cold because it doesn't run so fast when I'm trying to get stuff put in place. So my glue isn't running out all over the floor and dripping everywhere and creating a big mess the way it does when it's warm out and I'm trying to glue something. So once again, lay in your zigzag pattern just like I showed with the big first scarf joint. And obviously it's going to end about right here because that is as much as we're going to have two pieces of foam touching. And of course, down flat. And that's our first one. Now we're going to take these two. Well, I guess we can get away with it because the glue is nice and thick and cold. And we're going to now lay these two together the way we want them to be, so they're nice and tight. Body weight is one of the best things you can use for slamming these two together and holding them while you tape. You obviously want to get all the little loose pieces off because they cause your tape to have problems sticking. There we go. This is our second hinge. Once again, we'll take and hinge open. Now you can see why this one was already done, because you can't hinge this one after it's been taped onto that one, but this one can still be hinged. Lay your glue bead, like we just did. And in the end, this will be a one-piece bow deck, just like I want to have. But I'll have to let this cure. It'll basically at least overnight. I might get to it tomorrow night. That's actually one of the nice things about these kayaks is you can come and go, and there we go. Put that down. I'll lay my weights on here, press it down hard on the floor, and when I come back, this will be a one-piece bow deck, ready to glue onto the boat, just the way I want to. The different tools I have for scoring up the foam. This is one of those times when a smaller one, rather than the big honking huge one, or the one with the bigger wheel, is better, and it's for scoring up this foam that's going to be in this bulkhead to make sure that there is an excellent glue bond between each layer. And that actually does a very good job, and I'm just laying them out in the same order they're going to go in as they get glued in, so that there's no confusion when I got glue running and dripping, and you know, I need to get everything set fast before it all the glue kicks off and things start to stick where I don't want them to, things like that. So that's the preparation for gluing this bulk. First layer is glued in here, and we're going for the next one. And it's easier once you know where everything lines up here to just simply lay your glue where you know the bulkhead is going to go, where the piece of foam is going to be, rather than trying to stick it on all these different angles while it's trying to run off and drip and go everywhere except where you want it. So same thing, looping line, nothing different or spectacular about that. And then obviously get a good bead here on your edge. Put that right down in. Nice and tight. Of course, we're going to use some bricks to press this out to make sure it doesn't move. And if it's wanting to slide out on you, bamboo skewer. Pin it in place and it won't go anywhere on you. So we just, same thing, continuing that one layer to the next. That's why it's so important to lay them out in the order they're going to be stuck when you're getting ready. Because with any construction project, your preparation is often more important than, well, I don't know about more important, but it's what makes or breaks you on assembly time, is how well you've prepared and thought ahead and figured and all that kind of stuff for when you're doing your construction. And there you go, third layer. See, I would not trust that to stay in place after I walked away. So this is definitely all going to be pinned together with a couple skewers. Then, since this is all laid in and it's about as straight as I can expect it to be, considering it is a foam boat, skewers, pin everything together. Yeah, they never like to run straight. And they'll break off on you. That one, I believe, is going all the way down through the bottom of the hull even, I think. Yep, what do you know? Don't want it that far down. Alright. And once we get our skewers laid in, gravity clamps. And yes, this is up on a sawhorse right now. So what I did is I moved the sawhorse so that it's directly underneath the bottom of that stack, so I'm not putting any weird loads on the hull. And when it's cured, that'll all be one piece, and we'll be ready to, as I talked about, shaving the top of it off, laying on my 3-piece bow deck, which is right there, pressing out right now.